Now, former U.S. Ambassador at Large Nathan Sales and former NATO Ambassador Kurt Volker. Welcome to you both. Ambassador Sales, I'll start with you. It sounds like NATO allies are sort of quaking in their boots as they expect President Trump to land. To me, that's probably a good thing because they're taking this serious. They know the U.S. is serious, and they've got some work to do.
Well, I think you're right. I think one of President Trump's great legacies from his first term and now into his second is getting NATO allies to step up and invest more in their own defenses. And let's be clear, this is not some novel policy that the Trump administration cooked up. Presidents going back to President Obama have seen a need for NATO to invest more. What President Trump has done is actually deliver results. And I think that's going to be one of his great achievements in office, because NATO is more than just a piece of paper. The NATO alliance is good for America. It's good for Europe because it deters Russian aggression, but it's only meaningful if our allies step up to the plate and commit real resources to its mission of deterrence.
And Ambassador Volker, I'll pose this question to you because I've been particularly unimpressed by NATO's effort to support the United States and Israel with the conflict in Iran. I think when they say when people show you who they are, you should believe them, they've shown us that they contribute minimally and they don't want to support us in a time of need. Not that we needed it anyway. The president obviously has gone on with his plan as he needed to. But having said that, it's like they have alligator arms. The check comes at dinner and they can't seem to reach. They can't seem to do their part.
Yeah, well, look, first off, NATO is about the defense of Europe. It was founded in 1949 by countries that are free democracies getting together after the ashes of World War II and saying, we can't let that happen again. No one is going to attack Europe and then drag us into a war to save Europe. We're going to prevent that. And NATO's been around for 75 years, and it has done exactly that. It has prevented a major war in Europe. So that's a good thing. Now, when you look at an expeditionary war, something we chose to do, to go to Iran, we didn't tell anybody that we were going to go to Iran. We didn't come to them and say, hey, can you join us? Can you use some of your forces to help us here? Can we use our air facilities out of your country? We didn't do any of that until after we already started the war, and then we were already complaining that they weren't helping. So what's happened is Europe was flat-footed, and they were very slow to catch on. But they have caught on. And they understand now that this is important for the United States, important for President Trump. And I think what you'll hear from the NATO summit this week is NATO allies expressing that they are willing to help in a long-term permanent solution for security in the Persian Gulf. They need to know what the peace deal is going to be, and none of us know what the peace deal will be yet. But when there is, I think you're going to see that they are offering to help.
Nathan, I want to get your reaction as well to news that Ukraine struck Russian oil refinery assets deep in Russian territory, drone attack. It seems that Ukraine has really turned the tide of this war. And I wonder what you think the conversation at the NATO summit will be around that and how you think President Trump will continue to react to some of this news we're getting of Ukraine's battlefield successes.
It's a great question. I'd make 2 points on that. First of all, juxtapose 2 images. One of Ukraine using long-range, innovative munitions to take the war to the Russian energy industry, which is bankrolling the Russian war machine. That's one screen. The other screen is what Russia does, and that is rain down fire and brimstone on apartment buildings in Kyiv and hospitals. And that really shows what this war is about, Russia's brutal war of aggression. How do we end this in a way that preserves American interests in Europe and Ukrainian interests? And it has to be imposing costs on Putin. Now, that means economic sanctions that we can impose, but also Ukraine is now imposing the worst kind of economic sanctions on Russia's energy industry by taking refineries offline. That kind of leverage is how you squeeze Putin, because he's not going to come to the table out of the goodness of his heart. He's only going to settle if we force him to, and leverage is the key to making that happen.
Okay, and finally, Ambassador Volker, it sounds like the point that Nathan is making is the pressure has to be maximum pressure when it comes to this, because the American people don't have an app. This has gone on way longer than we all expected, and they don't have much more of an appetite for it. So do you think that there could be conversations that are constructive with respect to what we do and what our allies can do?
Well, yes, absolutely. So, as Ambassador Sales just said, the whole reason there's a war is because Vladimir Putin is waging a war against Ukraine. And if we're tired it's going on for a long time, it's because Vladimir Putin doesn't feel any pressure to stop. Finally, the Ukrainians are putting some pressure on him that might cause him to stop. What I think you're going to see at the NATO summit is an agreement that they can continue to access on a paid for basis American arms and ammunition, not aid that they're going to buy, and Europeans are going to buy American arms and ammunition so they can defend themselves and fight back. And Zelensky is going to be publicly calling for an immediate ceasefire. If Putin will stop, the war will end. And I think President Trump will be supportive of that.
All right, we will follow it all. Ambassadors Nathan Sales, Kurt Volker, we appreciate your time.